Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a tutorial using traditional materials. So I'm going to be using ink, watercolor, and acrylic, so basically a mixed media portrait. I went ahead and did the drawing ahead of time, and I'm going to start with some old craft paint, just like cheap craft paint in like a portrait color. I don't have the brand name on it anymore since it's so old. It's been in my craft supply box since forever, so I'm not quite sure what the exact color is, but it's basically like a flesh color. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a flat brush and kind of scrub the paint into the drawing, and I'm just kind of leaving areas around her eyes, around her nose, because later the watercolor I'm going to use is going to soak into those areas and make them a little darker. So I'm kind of using it to just kind of color the planes of the face first. And the next supply I planned to use was Higgins waterproof brown drawing ink, so you'll see me putting some onto my palette in a second. You just kind of use the eyedropper tool and put some out. But then I decided I wanted to block in her her outfit first. I wanted to do that in like a robin's egg blue. So I just started doing that first because I kind of wanted the hair, which I'm going to do with the brown ink, I kind of wanted that to fall over the blue background of her outfit. So I'm just blocking that in also with a flat little brush. And I think these paints, the one I'm using now, the Robin's Egg Blue, that is from the Handmade Modern series, which you can get at Target. I really like that series of paints because they have such a wide range of color and they're decent for cheap paints. They have pretty good coverage and they look really nice. So I've been collecting those every once in a while when I go to Target. And since I have some of that blue on my brush, I'm going to go ahead and color her eyes in the same color. And I'll come back to those later and add the irises in more detail. But for now, I'm just adding a little bit of color. Now for her hair, I'm going to use the Higgins brown drawing ink that I put on my palette before. And I'm going to change brushes. I'm using still a flat brush, but it has longer bristles, so it's kind of more flowy and makes a nice line that way. So I'm just blocking in her hair. And as you watch me block in the hair, I also wanted to point out kind of the background marks and the layers behind the drawing. And those were from like doing preliminary sketches and warm-ups with my non-dominant hand. And then I kind of half erased them, but I left them because it's nice to see the history of the piece kind of behind it all. So I usually leave like background layers and then paint over them. And sometimes they show through a little bit and sometimes not as much, but it's kind of nice when they do. So as I'm blocking in the hair, you can see that I'm giving some areas a little bit more ink than others. Just where there'd be shadows or darker parts of the hair, I'm kind of starting to define different areas of the hair. And this is a really fun drawing ink to work with. Again, it's the Higgins waterproof drawing ink in brown. And I've had it for a really long time, I think since college even. And it flows really nicely. It has like a kind of a nice sheen to it. It also has like a purple or gray undertone, and I've been really enjoying using this one a lot lately. It also dries pretty quick and it doesn't bleed through the page, at least not in the sketchbook I'm using. I will put a link to the sketchbook I'm using and all the other supplies that I've been using too. I'll put some links in the description below so you can check those out. So I'm kind of done with the hair part. And now I'm going to switch out my palette for my Jane Davenport watercolors in the neutrals palette. This is really a great set to work with. It's got vivid colors and a really nice selection too. I'm going to start with a color called Buff, and I'm just going around her eyes first. These are the areas that I left free of acrylic paint earlier, so you can kind of see the colors seeping in a little bit more into the paper. And I did that on purpose to kind of help my shadows a little bit. So just going around the eyes and around the nose, and it got a little heavy there, so I'm going to blot it with a little paper towel. Going to go around the under part of the mouth, the areas around the mouth. So again, that's where the acrylic paint wasn't covering, so it kind of went down into the crevices in between to make a better shadow, which is a really fun technique to do. And I'm just coming in and darkening up some of my shadows, adding some shadow around the forehead, around the cheeks a little bit too. And I'm going to come in now with kind of a darker color, the vitamin C, and I'm just adding it to the sides of her eyes, her nostrils, around her mouth, the shadow under her neck, and kind of just blending it all in. I'm using a water brush to do all of this, and this one is by Niji or Yasutomo. I'll also leave a link to that one down in the description below. I'm filling in her lips now with the color Apple. It's kind of a nice red. I'm doing the insides of her eyes with it too, and kind of adding a little bit more color to the top lip and to the middle, and leaving a little bit of a shine down the bottom there where I didn't add any color. And next I'm going to come in with a color Raven, and I'm going to do her pupils. Just come right in the center of the eye. Try to get them about the same size on each eye and the same shape. Got a little overboard there. And I'm just going to come in and add some depth on the side of her eyes, sides of her mouth, her nostrils, and the center of the mouth. And now I'm going to switch out my palettes and go back to my acrylic palette. And I decided on the Tangelo color from the Handmade Modern series to use for the background. So I'm just kind of adding just a little bit of water to thin it down a little bit. Just kind of blocking in some big areas first, then refining and going around the figure a little tighter. I'm just using the same brush that I used for her hair earlier. So it's kind of like a flat brush with longer bristles, which makes it flowy and nice to use. This part's really fun, just filling in blank areas, not thinking too much, just kind of enjoying the process and enjoying the materials. I've really been enjoying working in my sketchbooks lately, and I usually have a few going at the same time. That way, if I'm waiting for one to dry, I can kind of work on a new page and another one, and kind of switch back and forth that way. I also like to use up all the materials that I put out on the palette. I don't like to waste any paint, so if I have a little extra, maybe I'll put a few strokes of paint in another book, or fill in some extra stuff that I was leaving for later. I always like to use every little bit of paint. And I also wanted to let you know that I did speed this video up a little bit so that you didn't have to watch me paint in real time, because it's kind of a slow process. But so I don't normally paint this fast, but yeah, that's the video being sped up. But of course, if you do want to see the videos in real time and watch me paint at the speed I paint at, then leave me a comment down below, and maybe in the future I'll film one that's a bit longer. And now I'm taking out my Jane Davenport Bright palette, and I'm using that color 70s eyeshadow, which is a nice blue, going over her whole outfit that I did previously in acrylic. And this is just also kind of falling into the cracks and crevices where I didn't have the acrylic paint earlier, giving it some darker areas, and also just kind of settling on top of the acrylic paint in a really interesting way, kind of leaving some texture there and giving it a little bit more interest in those areas, so it's not just a flat color. So now I'm going to move aside that palette, and using a Tuscan Red color erase pencil, I'm just going to kind of darken up some areas that kind of got lost underneath the paint. So defining some of the areas around her eyes a little bit, and her eyelids. Coming in with the eyelashes there, and doing the eyebrows too. Just adding in some lower lashes and some definition underneath the eye. Working on the pupils a little bit. Darkening them up. Doing some nostrils, the areas underneath the nose. Defining the arches of the lips and the center of the lip a little bit better. And of course, before I did any of the drawing with the pencil, I waited for everything to dry completely. So I had stopped the video a little bit and let it dry really thoroughly before I came back in with the pencil. So I'm just coming around and adding in more definition everywhere with the pencil, kind of trying to tie it all together. And as I'm finishing up the hair, just adding some strands here and there, I want to say thank you so much for watching my videos. Sorry I had to take a little break again from posting. I have been under the weather again, which seems to be like a theme lately, but hopefully things are going to go better and I'll be able to post like once a week again. So let me know what you'd like to see. Let me know if you enjoyed this one. And please don't forget to subscribe and do a thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.